Hi, I'm Mark. Welcome back to Foothill Paint and Fabrication. Well, we're right back on Project Ruby today, and she's been giving me quite a fight for the last week. It's been about a week since I shot any video. I put in 6 10-hour days on this car trying to get that quarter panel to fit. And you know, you guys saw the repairs the last person did. Well, they just kind of pulled it halfway close, blobbed on some body filler and called it good. Well, all those mating surfaces down low where all that damage was, they were so far out of whack, the quarter panel would not go on. I spent a day and a half trying to gain 3/32 of an inch at the door jamb for the door gap. That's the kind of fight she's been putting up for me. But I'm winning. I think I've won, and the quarter panel pretty much just drops on now. So if you're having to put a quarter panel on and you're having to force it, there's a problem. You know, you got to figure out what's going on, and that's what I've been spending all this time doing. Plus the donor quarter panel, it wasn't as pristine as I had thought, so I spent about a day or so getting that straightened out pretty good. So let's jump in here, take a look at what I've got done, what we need to do, and kind of work up a game plan to get this quarter panel on this car. All right guys, let's start here at the door jamb and my screw up. You know, Mark took a lot of measurements and he was trying to be careful, make sure everything goes right back where it belongs. But does he follow them once he starts fitting up the quarter panel? No. The gap in the window channel here is 1 1/8. Now I knew that, but what I did, how I screwed up was I was pushing the quarter panel all the way up against the post, and it seems, you know, stands to reason it goes right up against there, and that's where they welded in. No, there's a gap in there. And then by not leaving the gap in there and keeping this measurement proper, I actually trimmed the sheet metal in this area from here to here too big. Because I had it up against here, marked it, cut it back. I'm like, all right, look at that gap, it's perfect. Well, then I realized my measurement here was wrong, so I have a little gap right here. Too much to weld in just with the gap, so I think I'm going to put some filler rod in there when I fit it up, and they just weld right over the top of it. The rest of the gap is going to be fine. It's fitting really tight. I like it. It's pretty hard to do on a curve like this, but I got it pretty good. So the quarter panel is fitting really good here, and I'm getting my door gap right where it was before, so that's good. This gap will be correct. We'll have the gap in there like we're supposed to, so that's all good. Down along here, that we're good there. Up here where the sail panel meets, now I left the drip edge on the sail panel and it drops in just like it's supposed to. I've got it, this piece right here is actually the original sail panel off the other quarter panel. What I did was I cut it back and then I bent that down so I can have a little lap joint here, so the new quarter panel will actually lay on top of that just a little bit, and then we're just going to weld right over the top. You guys remember that's where all that leading was, so it's recessed here pretty good anyways. Not a huge deal, but we're going to have to check and make sure our flow across here is correct before we weld it in. We may have to do some manipulation around here to make sure that's nice, so all we have to do is fill a little small area right here. But this is looking good. Come around here. This is pretty straightforward. It's all ready to go. Now the wheel weld gave me quite a bit of trouble. Over here I had to weld, I don't know if you guys remember, there was a big hole right there, and then that was not right. So I had to hammer it out and rework it, but it's looking pretty good. It wasn't too much trouble. The lip right here was too far in, so I had to put the porta power and pull that back out. That was fairly straightforward. Right here gave me a lot of trouble. I spent almost a whole day on this, and I finally had to give up on it. And I just, it was late, and I just jumped in the pool and just slept on it. You know, I just had to think on it. And so I finally got this whole area. It was tacoed in so bad from that collision that, and since they didn't push it back where it belonged, I was kind of flying blind on how it was supposed to look. So I kept going back to the other side, which isn't identical, but very close. And so I just kept going back and forth with measurements and, you know, just trying to get this to fit properly. And I finally got there. The piece back here was also bent up. The flange where it meets that one was rolled in, never repaired, so I had to try to find a way to get that back where it belonged. I got them all pretty close, not perfect, but it looks really good. It's got good shape. The quarter panel lays right on here, comes right off of the lip for the pinch weld and falls right onto that. So once we start fitting up today, we'll see if that's going to work out just fine. Now where I lost my 3/32 is right here. So when that last quarter panel was hit, it pulled this whole area in and they pulled it back out. They pulled it too far. And what happened was this piece right here, the quarter panel sits right over the top of it. Well, it would not go that way any farther no matter what I did, and I could not get, I was 3/32 short on my door gap. So I finally figured it out, but it took me quite a while to figure that out. Every mating surface had to be checked to figure out what was holding that quarter panel from going forward 3/32 of an inch. Finally figured it out. Seems pretty obvious now, but at the time, I was struggling to get that thing to go forward. You can see the strap in there, and I will still use that today to hold that in position while we get this all tacked up. But it took a little bit of fight to get the quarter panel just to drop on like it should, but it fits pretty good now. Let's go ahead and take a look at the quarter panel, which I thought was pretty pristine. Turns out not so much. Okay, so the quarter panel is pretty much ready to go. We got the whole area here where the sail panel is. I got most of the brazing out here. That brazing is kind of hard to get out without, you know, damaging the steel, but I got most of it out, so when we're welding it doesn't cause any problems. That's all cleaned up really nice. We're looking pretty good around in here. I had to do some repairs over here that still needs a little bit more repair. Like I spoke about on the car, this was kind of messed up and then it caused some of the problems too about getting the alignment. But this is the area that kind of popped up on me. So there was a dent like right here. I could feel it on the other side. There was a dent over there and one up here. So I thought, well, I'll just grind that body filler off and kind of hammer out these dents. Well, I started grinding right here. Before you know it, I'm over here and then I'm up over here. I'm still hitting body filler and I went this whole area and I was thinking, oh no, not again. But most of these were just little tiny dents. I just used the bullseye pick and got those out no problem. This was oil canned pretty good, so I think that's why they just left it depressed and body filled over the top. So I've got it hammered out pretty good. I worked it pretty good. I had to heat shrink it a couple times to get it to stay. It's nice and solid now. Pushed out that dent. It's a little wavy still, but it's kind of hard to work laying on the sawhorses. You can't tell if it's you know, the right shape or whatever. So I've got it good enough to go back on the car. It was a little easier getting the bullseye pick obviously up in here and doing a lot of this work and hammer and dolling with it off the car, but it's time to put it on the car so I'll finish that off once it comes back from being dipped. The dent up here, this one they didn't try to hammer out at all, they just filled it, and so I pushed it back out. It's pretty good. It's a little wavy, but I can finish that off later. It's looking pretty good. So the flanges are all been straightened and cleaned up, so we're ready to go there. These pins, I don't know if you guys can see these pins. So I had cut these pins off, and they hold the clips that hold the rocker molding. So I cut those off when I was a kid, you know, a teenager, thinking, oh, I don't want moldings on the bottom. So I had to rebuild those, and those are just nails that I've machined down to the exact same size as the pin, drilled a hole right where it belongs, put it through with a little jig to hold it up at the right distance, and then just welded it on the back side. So it worked out pretty good. Pretty happy about that, getting those on there. I did not want to just use screws because that's the fallback. You just screw that clip on, but then you've got a penetration in your quarter panel. Water can get in there, so that's no bueno. So all in all, we're looking really good. This quarter panel is about as straight and ready to go on as it's going to be. Obviously, we have a lot more work to do to it once it's on the car and back from being dipped, but as far as it goes right now, I think it's ready to hang on the car. Okay guys, let's get this quarter panel on, hopefully for the second to last time, or maybe a couple more times, who knows. But we're gonna fit it on here as many times as it takes to make sure it fits perfect before we start welding it on. Let me grab this thing. You just grab it and kind of throw it at the car and it lands right on there, stays perfect, but not really. It takes a little jiggling to get it on there, but it fits a lot better than it did a week ago. This thing is a monster. It's the biggest quarter panel I've ever done in my life. I've done a few. Clamp on here. pretty good. Shoehorn it in around the lip here. Just like that. I'll tell you, 5 days ago, that thing was 20 minutes to get it on and off. Now it just kind of lays on there really nice. So we're looking pretty good. Let me grab the camera and I'll show you the fitment. Okay, let's start with one of the critical points is the door gap here. So we're sitting flush right here. So that is laying perfect, and that's right where I cut it. It's just on the break right here, so when I weld it, I can round that over really nice. It shouldn't have any warpage because of the thickness and the shape, so we should be really good there, and it'll be easy to metal finish. Down here at the bottom, fits really tight. Up here, that's where my gap is, where I screwed up, but it is what it is. So let's close the door and take a look at it. Got this block in here to hold the door at the perfect closed spot. And if we look at it, I hold it right up against there, we're looking really good across here. So the bottom needs to go in a little bit, but it's lining up really nice. And once it's on there, you know, you can adjust the door, but I want to get that quarter panel just as perfect as possible so it saves us a lot of work later down the line. So in this door gap right here is really good. Remember those measurements we took? It is almost right on the money exactly on each one of them. So I'm pretty happy about that. Fitting down across the bottom there, that's where that was pinch weld internally. So I'm gonna probably reach through there and try to put sheet metal screws to hold that in place, to pinch it together, or clamps, or whatever I can do. And then I will plug weld some spots inside there. I think I can reach in through the opening inside, get the MIG down in there, and tack that down inside. So that's doing good. The lip here is looking really good. We got good shape along here. The spacing is just right. Down over here, I'm actually going to use the quarter panel. I still got a little work here to do, so I'm going to use the shape of the quarter panel to guide me on how that's supposed to lay. But it's starting to look really good. And like I said, it's just laying here almost perfect. And that's what you want. If you got to pull it and clamp it, you know, something's probably not quite right. So there's still a little bit of work to be done along here, that pinch weld. I don't think that internal panel and the quarter panel are meeting just right. So I still got a little tweakage to do there, but I'm really happy the way it's looking so far. So up here on the sail panel, the drip edge is right perfect where it's supposed to be. And here's the spot where we're gonna just weld it. So this is the only thing we need to check here is making sure that this has got the right shape and this is out or in where it belongs. So we'll do a little bit of checking on that. We can do a little tweaking right now, but it's all looking pretty good. And you can see right here, see these little circles right here? Those some dimensions when I was doing trimming, but those are dents right there, and they're like little tomahawk chops right on there. And what happened was I think that was too high before they leaded it, and they just took a hammer and wham, 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 and just put leading over the top of it. So our line right here is looking really good. That looks really nice. And around over here on this side, right where the window sits, that's looking all really nice right there too. So I'm pretty happy about that. This piece that you see bent up right here, that actually lays on top of this. So I had to bend it up out of the way. I didn't want to cut it away and put it back on. So I just bent it up just once. And then when it's in its final position, then I can bend this back down, and then that will be spot welded on there. And I'm looking at borrowing a spot welder or buying one to spot weld, because I got a lot of welds that could be spot welded along here instead of plug welded. If I could spot weld down inside here, that'd be ideal. And of course, all along that pinch weld here, up all along there, up inside there. So, you know, always looking for a reason or an excuse to buy a new tool, right? So I got a few, I sent a few texts out this morning to see if anybody's got one I could borrow. If not, I might end up buying one. It'll save me a ton of work opposed to plug welding. I still have plug welding up in here to do because of all those spot welds we had to drill out. But you know, a spot welder would really save me a ton of labor, and it'd be a lot cleaner in the end. So, but in the back here, it's looking really nice. It's fitting up in here really nice. I have to do a little bit more, you know, messing around, but these two pieces fit just like they're supposed to. I mean, look at that. That's it's working out really good. Now, We're still going to set the trunk on here and line it up over here and then see how it fits, because we can still move this thing in and out, jiggle it in and out, you know, do a little bit of that manipulation. Also, the filler panel has to go in too. Now, it's not going to go permanently, but it's going to go in here. I'm going to clamp it over to that sail panel. We're going to get it all lined up where it belongs, and then we're going to use that to tell us where the sail panel wants to be over here. So later, because that filler panel is not going to stay, we're going to take it off and the car is going to go get dipped. Then we'll put it back on later, but I want to use that as my guide to get this sail panel and the quarter panel just in the right spot. So that's all part of what we're doing on the fitment here, is getting this thing fitted just right. You know, tacking it on there isn't that hard. Doing the final welding, that's a little bit more involved, but getting it all tacked and done where it's going to stay, that takes all the work. So we're going to go ahead and get to work. I got a little bit of work to do down here. I'll bring you back once we get that done, and then we're going to figure out some of these other things we need to get ready for before we can get this quarter panel on here for the final time. All right, guys, it's starting to come together. I got that piece down there fitting pretty good. I still don't like that pinch weld. I still got some work over there, but that's fairly easy to do. Over here, I actually cut some blocks to the exact dimension that's supposed to be inside here, and that's what I should have done in the first place when I started fitting up, but I'm an idiot. I didn't. So this gap is just too big and it's driving me crazy. I'm going to have to fix that. I'm not going to weld that gap in. That's just too big. I can't stand it. But the rest of it's coming together really nicely. You can see a couple of stir sticks jammed in right here, and that's to hold the gap on the drip edge, holds that sheet metal in, so when all this is tacked inside here and tacked up through here, that'll hold it in the perfect spot. Over here, if you take the straight edge, that's looking really nice down through there, and that's good. Now you see the grid I put up on here? There's a matching one on the other side, and what I did was, let me grab it, I just took my profile gauge, you know, these cheapy ones you get on Amazon, and all I did was I just went to the other side and set it, and then I come back to this side and check it, you know, see how it matches. So it's actually looking pretty good on most of it. You can see right here I got some scribbles. I need to bend this sheet metal right here on the lip. I need to bend that in, and a little bit over here I need to bend that in, and that way when I put the panel back on, I can keep checking it with the profile gauge and just tap that down to this lace perfect. This is a little too far in right now, and I don't want to, you know, blob a bunch of filler on here. I want to get this as close as possible. Now, you know, you can tell there's still some leading left here. So it had a pretty good swath of leading where they, you know, blended it in. But I want to keep any body filler or leading, if I attempt leading this again, down to a minimum. So we want to get this as sweet as possible before we weld it in. But it's starting to come together really nicely. I have to get to work on fixing my screw up over here. So that's what I'll be doing off camera. I may take it, my TIG welder's over at Dave's, and he's 100 times better TIG welder than me. So I may just make the part up, take the whole thing over there, have him weld it for me, and then come back and rescribe it. But that's what I'm going to be working on next. I'll bring you back when we get my screw up fixed up, and hopefully it's all looking good. Okay guys, got my screw up fixed up. Took it over to Dave's. I made a piece and put it in here. He TIG welded it for me. I metal finished it, then rescribed it and got it cut. So it's looking really good. I do still have a little bit of a gap right here, just a little bit. I get my fingernail in there, but the rest of it, you guys can tell, is looking really good. Super tight. I'm pretty happy about that. And it's laying flush everywhere, but it starts to creep out right about here. I need to pull this out a little bit to match the quarter panel, but I don't want to do that till I start tacking this, and then I can tap it from the other side and or level it out some way and then get a tack and tack and tack on it. But it's looking really good. It was the smart thing to do to add that in, and I was able to reshape this a lot better and get it to match the door so much better. The blocks are in there. You guys see I got a ratchet strap on here. I'm actually pulling up on the quarter panel, which is stretching it out because it had a little bit too much curve this way, and the door was not lining up like it should. So now, when we close the door, our door gap is not exactly like it was. I can't get it back to exactly where it was. It's a little bit tighter on the top than the bottom, but it's, you know, we're talking thousandths, so that's not that big a deal. But if you look down here, if I can get a good angle for you guys, this door is lining up really nicely to the quarter panel. So I'm really happy about that. That was my biggest concern on this whole thing, is getting that profile matched, and putting that strap on there and pulling a little bit. It actually flattened that fender out and pulled that center in, because I was having to push on that while I was scribing to hold it in the right spot, so I could get it trimmed and fit up on there. So now with that ratchet strap on there and the clamp, it's holding in place. So we got that done, and relieved. I had to fix my mistake, but you know, it is what it is. Then I've got a screw, sheet metal screw in here holding that, and all along the bottom here, I've got 3 screws down inside there. So there's a pinch weld down inside there, and I've got screws holding it in place. They're temporary. What'll happen is I've got some plug weld holes in there, and once I reach in there and plug weld those, I can take the screws out and then weld those screw holes shut as well. But we're clamped up all over the place. I've got just one clamp here on the wheel well. I've still got the stir sticks jammed in there. This area is looking really good. I've got some clamps over here holding it this way and down. I've got a couple of clamps over here, got a C-clamp over here, clamp down there. The lower pinch weld and the wheel well, that's no big deal. There's so much movement in that, it's not critical, you know, and you don't even see it. Up here and around that door and, you know, the filler panel, that's what you see. So that's where we're at right now. We're just about, well, I got to clean up a lot of tools. I got crap laying everywhere, but we're about to fit the filler panel, and I just measured it, and from there to there, it is exactly the same as what I have. So I'm not going to jinx myself and say it's going to drop right in and fit perfect, but I think it's going to fit. So let me clean up all these tools. We've got this piece right here to bend back down, and I did not want to bend that down, like I mentioned earlier, until I was sure this quarter panel is in the right spot. And I prepped all the areas before I put it on for the final time. So I'm gonna go ahead. I couldn't locate a spot welder to borrow, so I'm just gonna go buy one. And but I prepped all the surfaces that I'm gonna spot weld to make sure they're super clean, and the spot welds hold really tight. So let me clean up all these tools. I'm gonna bend this piece down and clamp it right there, or at least get it down out of the way, and then we're gonna lower that filler panel in there and see how it looks. All right, we are finally moving forward. So it's fitting pretty good. I dropped that panel in there. I had to do a little bit of tweaking over here. Now this still needs to be trimmed, because we are going to use part of the original channel and then this part right here. So we're going to actually cut some of this out and then just seam it right there. We'll weld it together, but it's going to look really good, I think. You won't be able to tell, but you look down there, it's laying in there pretty good. The distance, I didn't have to really force it down in there. Once we clamp it along those edges, I think it's going to come together really nice. I can't fit it perfectly because, like I said, we do need to do some trimming on each side, and I'm not going to do that until the car comes back from being dipped. So it's actually looking really good down those lines, and the distance is actually feeling pretty good. So pretty happy about that. It's still, I think, just a little short here. But once it sets all the way down, it may, you know, lay in there and be just right. So I'm got my fingers crossed on that. But I think it's looking really good. That panel dropped basically right in. So I didn't have to fight it at all, and that's what you want. If you got to fight them, then something's crooked somewhere. Seems not like fingers. Okay, it's sitting on there pretty flat on those blocks I put up underneath just to hold it about the right height so we can get a better idea. We don't want it too low to throw off our gap. So I'm going to line it up over here, and I'll bring you right back, and we'll take a look at this side and see what it looks like. Okay guys, I've had the trunk lid on and off a couple of times since you just saw me drop it on. I was taking some measurements, I was lining it up, and it just wasn't working out. And then I just kept messing with it, and I was having trouble over here. Things just didn't look right. And then I realized that this was too low and turned a little bit like that. So I've got it in the right position now. I actually had to put a jack in the trunk with a board and actually jack that up a little bit, get it clamped. I made a little kind of a clamp out of a piece of steel to go through the molding bolt hole and tighten that on there so it's clamped on pretty good so it's not moving. Then I was able to get the trunk lid back on again and line up these gaps so they're nice and even. They're nice and parallel. I've got it lined up across here and across this plane here. So it's looking really good on both sides. So I'm pretty happy about that. I think we're just about ready. It has a little bit bigger gap right here than on the other side, but that's easily fixed later. Not that big a deal. It was probably like that before. So like I mentioned before, those gaps back there aren't always right. So it's just one of the things on these cars. But we are looking really good. I got the spot welder out of the box, put it all together. It does not come with a plug though. So if you buy one, you got to supply your own plug. And I do not have a plug in stock, so I got to get one. And I just hardwired right into my extension cord for now. But I did some testing with it. And boy, I'll tell you what, this 240 volt model gets with it on 20 gauge. That was way too long. See how blue it is? It only takes like 2 seconds to spot weld it really well. So it looks like it's going to work out. We're getting very close to actually starting to spot weld and tack this thing together. But I've got to spend a lot of time. I'm going to spend at least an hour triple checking everything to make sure we're good to go. And me moving this back here didn't affect something up there. I'm just going to go over the whole thing. I've only got one shot at this. I certainly don't want to cut it off again or cut a few welds loose because I screwed up. So I'm going to be spending some time off camera, getting everything quadruple checked, and then we're going to start tacking this thing together. Okay guys, I jumped ahead pretty quick. I got to get this thing done. I'm running out of time really fast. But we got it tacked on along here. A bunch of small tacks. I just kept cooling it and tacking it. But before we did that, we actually did the door jamb. So if you guys look down there, you can see that is looking really good. So what I did was, I had Dave come over. Now I got my TIG welder. I borrowed it back from Dave. He's been using it on his Model 8 shop. And I just had him come over. I don't have time for me to practice and get good at TIG welding, good enough to do this. So he came over and TIG welded that for me, really nice. And then he also helped me while I held in the sheet metal, you know, here and there. I just held it while he tacked it, and then we got the back as well. So I had to, you know, just get a long screwdriver and lean over his shoulder and just push on the sheet metal in certain spots where I couldn't get a clamp, and then he's got it tacked, and then we could just hammer it around a little bit. So this is plug welded all through here. I just used the MIG on that. Up here, I use the MIG up here. I know it doesn't look like much, but actually some of that leading is still in there. Man, what a bear. That would just blow out of there when you get it hot. So it's tacked all along here and ground. So it's really ready to go because this either gets filler or lead again. So it's not super critical that you get the welds perfectly smooth. So it's looking really good. What we're at now is plug welding down inside there, and then start spot welding. Okay guys, this is kind of a weird deal, but I can't really get my helmet on and see anyway, so I'm just gonna aim the stinger right at the hole and then shut my eyes and pull the trigger. So it's gonna be a little weird, but you know, you gotta do what you gotta do. Hey, not bad with my eyes shut. All right, that's all the plug welds. Now I just have to take the 3 screws out and weld those holes in, and we'll be good to go. Well, not much to look at, but they'll hold. So I got them all, got all the holes filled, so we're good to go. All right, moving right along. That beats plug welding, I'll tell you what. That's awesome. Okay, I got about 4 or 5 plug welds along that inner fender well. I've got all the pinch weld along here spot welded. So we are done. Can't believe it. Finally came together. Let's throw that filler panel and the trunk lid on there just for fun to see how this thing's going to look. Okay, after pushing so hard, it is finally done, or done enough to go, you know, in the trailer. So the gaps look really good, nice and even. Now this trunk lid's sitting a little low. I've got shims in there, but they're not exactly the right thickness to do it right, but it's looking pretty nice. Even the gap back here, although it's too tight because this piece is not sitting down as far as it should, and once it does, then this gap will open up, but it looks uniform all the way across, and that's really what you want. So once that sits down, hopefully we can get it to match the sides so that it's exact same gap all the way around, nice, straight, even reveal on everything, and that's really what you want. That way it looks perfect, you know. There's no wandering, or it doesn't get fat and skinny. You want it to be the exact same thickness all the way through, but it's looking really good. Pretty happy. This is all checking out really nicely. I've put the profile gauge on it multiple times, had to modify the spot welder to get in that little groove. I ground down one of the lugs a little bit so it would fit in there. Got that all spot welded. So pretty happy to get everything done. It's locked down. Solid, you know, and everything's measuring out just right. So in the door, the door and the quarter panel match together very, very nicely. So when we go to start doing all our metal work to get everything perfect, we're way closer, and it shouldn't be as much work. So maybe all this hard work has saved me some down the line. Okay guys, what an ordeal. I'm glad I got it done on time. I was a little worried that once I cut it off, I wasn't going to be able to get it done in time, but we got a few days to spare, so I have some other stuff that needs to be done before I load everything in the trailer, so we are back slightly ahead of schedule, so that's good news. The quarter panel came out great. I'm happy the way everything is. Obviously, we have a lot of finishing left to do, but it's structurally sound. It's on there, and can go in the tank, in and out of the tank as much as they need to, and I don't have to worry about, you know, anything twisting or moving. So as far as that goes, this one's done. Thanks for joining me here at Foothill Paint Fabrication. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't already. Mash that bell and drop me a comment. I'd love to hear from you guys. We'll see you.